Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for taking the time to join me today on my presentation about selecting a major at a university in the United States. The presentation is called A Major Choice, and hopefully not only will it help you understand how to select a major, but understand the relationship between your academic major and eventually your internship and job opportunities in the USA. So for the agenda of this webinar, I will cover the following points. The first one is discussing the U.S. liberal arts education and curriculum, help you guys define what is a major versus a minor, and of course, how to select a major as well, which is a very important piece of the presentation. There are also a lot of common majors for international students once they get to the U.S. And then, of course, when to select your major. When do you have to decide on a major? And what if you pick the wrong major and you want to change your major? As well as how that major will translate professionally, so that once you do finish college, you're able to find a good job. Okay. So just a quick introduction about myself, your presenter. My name is Irene Tia, and I am the founder and CEO of USA College Connection and also H1B Academy. So what I have done throughout the course of the last 20 years is done a lot of global marketing. And so what happens is I put my practice of marketing, a lot of different brands and products to people, because it's just as important for you to know how to market yourself when you're trying to apply to college, graduate school, or even a new job. And I know that the process for a lot of you students internationally can be very, very challenging. Because you're competing with so many applicants, not just internationally, but also here in the US. And so combining my ability to market you and also my understanding of different cultures will help you stand out in this process of applying, but also help you succeed throughout the time that you're here in the United States. Because a lot of you are going to do different programs and different courses of study, as well as pursue different career opportunities. So we're here to help you along the way. Okay. If you want to know more, you can also visit my website at usacollegeconnection.com or askucc.com. Now, learning culture in the United States. I know that for a lot of you, this is a very different learning culture, because I know that some of the students are coming from Asia versus Europe. You will encounter almost like a shock in the classroom when you get to the US. You guys are coming from, a learning culture where it's very heavy test and exam based, so that you're only able to pass to the next grade level if you pass the exam. Whereas in the US, it's actually extremely sort of what I call holistic. So in other words, everything that we do in terms of educating the student is for the whole person. And so the exam is just one part of the requirements that you're going to have at the US university. There are other parts that you're going to be graded on. And so unlike a lot of you that come from Asia, for example, where you really just get one grade, which is based on the exam you take, in the US, you're going to be graded on several things like test taking, presentation, teamwork, so on and so forth. And so a lot of these things mean that you're going to have a different mindset when you get here to the US. Okay, and so when it comes to like picking a major, especially, it is going to be very different for you, because most of you will then have an exam, take that, and decide right away what type of university you're going to. And most likely that university has something to do with the major. So a lot of you might end up, if you stayed in your home countries, you would go to, for example, Ho Chi Minh College of Medicine, or the Chinese School of Engineering and Telecommunications. And so a lot of cultures outside of the US tend to already pretty much determine what you're studying as soon as you're able to place on a particular score in your examination, and then that will determine the future of your university path as well as what you're able to study. Here, you actually can go to several different universities that offer similar subjects and majors, but it's really up to you to decide, and that's why I wanted to discuss with you about the entire liberal arts education here in the United States. I know that this is a term that you probably hear a lot from U.S. universities. In fact, I pulled a definition from Yale University because they're an Ivy League school. And the whole idea of a liberal arts education is when students can think and learn across disciplines, literally liberating or freeing the mind to its fullest potential. So the essence of such an education is not what you study, but the result, because the goal is you want to gain the ability to think critically and independently and to write, reason, and communicate clearly. And remember this because this is the foundation for all professionals. This is what's going to help you succeed after you've received an American degree. Okay? So I really, really like Yale's definition because it really helps us tie in what I'm going to discuss with you about how a major could help you decide on your career future. Okay, now I'm going to use myself as an example. I actually graduated from the University of Pennsylvania. It is an Ivy League school as well, but also Benjamin Franklin. He's a very prominent historic figure in the United States. He founded he's one of the founders of the country. And so I really enjoy going to University of Pennsylvania because I appreciate their core curriculum. A lot of what they emphasize in this curriculum is to make sure that I get a general education that covers what we just discussed with liberal arts, meaning that there's a very foundational approach where, there's things like writing, cultural skills, as well as a lot of different types of practical knowledge that you can gain in sectors like psychology, society, biology, and science. These are all sort of a foundation for what you need to study, and then you can decide on a major or, for example, an elective as well, because the electives give you guys the opportunity to find out, what you're interested in, what you're passionate about. And so it's a very extremely whole sort of person type of study and educational approach. And so a lot of the universities in the United States will take this sort of liberal arts approach to how they will educate you, which is great because I know that a lot of you that come from your home countries, a lot of times you don't have the opportunity to know who you are, what you're good at, because you are there to test well all the time and get past the exam to go to the next grade level. So this is your opportunity to come to the US and really learn about yourself, find out what you're good at, what you're not good at, what you're interested in. So this is really a different type of educational experience for you, which is why I wanted to make sure that all of you understood the different learning culture between your home country as well as the US. And then, of course, the definition of a major. Now, a major is generally a main academic discipline to which an undergraduate student formally commits to, okay? So you would have to successfully complete the courses prescribed in an academic major in order to qualify and earn an undergraduate degree. And then from there, a lot of institutions, they require you to do a major, but then they also will allow you to do more than one major if your schedule permits. But also, if you decide you only want to do one major, you can also do a minor. Now, a minor is then the secondary academic discipline to which an undergraduate student selects. So very similar to the major, the university is going to lay out a framework of required classes for you to complete in order to earn the minor. Okay, but these two usually go hand in hand because sometimes a lot of you will decide, well, I really like this subject. I might not have time to take this other subject, but maybe I can do a major and then do a minor later on. Okay, and then of course, what should you consider when you're selecting your major? Because choosing a major can be a different process at a U.S. college than in your home country. And like I said, A lot of you come from home countries where once you have taken your, high school exam, that is going to determine the type of university you go to, and you will have to decide right away if you're going to study engineering, if you're going to study medicine or science or communications. In the United States, you don't have to do that. In fact, you're able to decide on a major much later in college, and we will discuss that in the next couple of slides. So what do you consider when you're selecting your major? And this is something that, again, I will tell you a little bit about my personal experience when I went to University of Pennsylvania. And number one, like I said before, this is your opportunity to be a student and learn all the things that you've never learned before. Okay, so, and it's your own self-exploration as well as your opportunity to, gain as much knowledge as possible. So you want to take advantage of your freshman year and do a lot of research on the subjects that interest you. And think about what your strengths are. For example, when I went to college, I knew right away that writing was not one of my strengths. In fact, it was one of the areas that I wanted to work on. But I also knew that I really enjoyed culture and history, and I also am a very visual person. So when I see things on the screen, I internalize it. I remember it much clearer when it's something that's very visual with a picture. And so I started to think about, well, what kinds of things do I enjoy the most? And I've always loved culture and arts. And so I wanted to look into that, but I also love things that were international. So international business, international relations, whatever had to do with the rest of the world and different countries. That was something that I was always interested in. So that's how I sort of approached my freshman year, by taking different types of classes that really helped me identify if those, interests of mine were true and genuine, or maybe this was not quite the right type of class for me. So when I first got into University of Pennsylvania, I thought for sure that I was going to major in international relations or some sort of international business. But then I realized, well, analytically speaking, yes, I love math, but I don't love number crunching all the time and looking only at numbers. I started to look at other courses involving culture, history, like history of Asia, or art history as well, because art history has a lot of different pictures, and it visualizes a lot of the things that you're trying to learn historically. And so I went through several of these different classes between international relations, business classes, history classes, art classes, or art history classes. And slowly I started to realize what were some of the subjects that will help me improve my writing, but also because I was so, I guess I was kind of writing challenged, if I'm interested enough in the topic, I am more likely to overcome that challenge and improve my writing. And so that was kind of the mindset that I had when I went into selecting courses for freshman year and determining my major. The other part is skill sets. So I kind of mentioned the interests and my strengths and also some of my weaknesses, but the skill sets. So I knew that writing is going to be important for me, because no matter what business I go into, you have to know how to communicate, not just verbally, but also in writing. And so that was something that I knew college would be the perfect opportunity to improve my writing skills. And so that's why when I try to explain things to you guys, sometimes it's not what you really learn, it's how you learn it. So just because it's something like, for example, history, yes, a lot of people say, well, what are you going to do with a history major? Well, it's not really what you're going to do with the history major. It's the skills that you acquired while you were taking those history classes. Skills like research, presentation skills, writing skills, reading through a lot of information and data, and then helping yourself, simplify the data so that you're able to at least give and convey an idea. And so all of those skills are very important, not just while you're in college, trying to get the grade for your major and to obviously graduate, but it's also very important when you're trying to get a job and start working in the workforce. So for example, I actually ended up, of all things, even though I could decide on Wharton or decide on taking something in liberal arts, I decided to major in art history. And a lot of people criticized me for majoring in art history because they thought, well, what are you going to do using this? Are you going to work for a museum or a gallery? And believe it or not, the skills that I learned through being an art history major and an East Asian art major as well, I had to do a dual degree, major and also a dual degree. But the dual major really, because I had to look at so many different cultures from the West as well as from the East, I ended up reading a lot of information, and I had to do lots of writing, paper, research, and also presentation. And when it came time for me to actually get a job after I graduated from college, I realized that those skills that I gained from being an art history major were life-saving for me in my profession in international marketing, because I had to deal with so many different countries, like I was studying so many different cultures while I was a college student. And the same things that I was using for research, to be able to filter and kind of go through a lot of information to simplify it to what is the most important, was what got me through my first 2 years of my career in international marketing with Estee Lauder, because they were expanding into all these international markets. And of course, I was able to handle a lot of data and be able to tell my boss, very, very clearly, this is what's important. Okay, so the skills that I learned from college, being art history major, applied more to my profession than the art history itself. Now, don't get me wrong, I still love art history and art, and I still go to the museums, and I still appreciate that as a hobby, as an interest of mine. And I do a lot of, antiques in terms of, I have a lot of antiques that I trade with people and help people evaluate. So as a hobby, I'm still using the things that I was interested in studying in college. And so those skills that I learned in terms of the technical side of looking at art has not gone away. But the important part is all the other things that I did end up learning and how I learned it. Okay, so the other important thing about how you will consider your major are the people. Now, the reason why I really wanted to do a dual major was because, well, number one, Western art was considered art history, Eastern art was in the East Asian Studies department. I actually met a wonderful professor in my East Asian major department who encouraged me to do a bachelor's degree and a master's degree at the same time. This professor also said to me that I can definitely combine both my majors in art history and East Asian studies, because I was doing Chinese art. And so a lot of the things that I was doing to write my thesis for my graduate degree, really she helped me understand what I could use and what I could kind of tie into both degrees and both majors. And so without her help, I don't think I would have considered doing 2 majors and 2 degrees. And also because of this professor, I was able to apply for a lot of interesting programs to work at museums and auction houses. And of course, I also ended up getting a full scholarship to study in a Chinese university after I had completed my 2 degrees. And so a lot of these things came from the professor and the department that I majored in. And so that's something that you really want to think about, because it's not just about what you learn or how you learn it, but whom are you learning this information from, and who do they know and they can put you in touch with to continue your learning beyond the classroom, beyond your campus, so that you're able to apply a lot of these things that you're learning from a technical standpoint practically into the real world, right? So talk to people who have majored in the subjects that you're interested in. If you're going to college as a freshman and you're struggling between economics or math, I remember that I actually did take an economics course and a math course, and believe it or not, my math teacher was amazing. And it actually made me consider to minor in math. And so a lot of times professors, you're going to have good professors that really know how to teach you very well, and some professors who are very smart, but they might not be able to communicate their knowledge to you. But either way, get to know those professors and then also talk to the people, the students who are in that major, and ask them, why did you major in math or economics? What kind of classes did you enjoy the most? And what were your favorite professors? And what else did you do during the summer? So that when you're done with school, did you get internships, or were you able to do volunteer work where you can apply all the things that you learned in your major to the actual future profession for that major? So all of these are important questions that you should ask the people who are part of that department and part of the major. And of course, what do you consider in terms of planning and timing for selecting your major? Because it does take a lot of planning. You do have to do a lot of research, exploring, asking questions, talking to people. But you must figure out, for example, if you want to be a math major, well, what kinds of classes do you need to take and when, right? Because you only have 4 years of college as an undergrad and 2 years as a graduate student. So a lot of times, you really need to make sure that you have planned your time very wisely, because trust me, those 4 to 2 years are going to go by so fast. And a lot of times it is timing, because maybe the professor you might really like, who's teaching a brilliant calculus class or math class, isn't there a particular semester because they're taking time off to do research. So you need to make sure. Or you could be getting into a calculus class that's too difficult because you didn't take the class that's required before you can take calculus. So sometimes there's pre-calculus and then there's calculus. And they're not going to let you enroll into calculus if you did not complete pre-calculus. And so you need to know the timing and the requirements to take these classes so that you're able to complete your major on time. Okay? And so I want to show all of you, because I think a majority of you are international students, these are some of the common majors that international students will take once they get to U.S. University. And this is based on the Institute of International Education. They do an open doors report annually to tell people what types of international students come here to study and what they're studying. And so, for example, business management is probably one of the most popular majors, followed by engineering, life sciences, math, and computer science, and social sciences. Now, this is the part that I wanted to talk to you guys about in terms of how you will decide your major if you're thinking about, of course, what are your opportunities after you finish the major. When you graduate from college and earn your degree, you want to get a job. I think that's what most people want to do once they have their degree and their majors. They need to find a job, and that's realistic. But again, don't forget, always think about what you're good at, what you're interested in, your strengths, your passion. Because whenever I meet people, especially when it comes to a doctor or an engineer, in your career, of course, all of you are very young right now, but when you start your career and throughout the time that you're in that particular profession, you're always going to have, highs and lows, good and bad things happen. It's your passion for that particular major and specialty that is going to get you through the bad times, okay? And also, I tell people, I know that a lot of you, your parents are going to be paying for your university and college degree in the U.S., so they're going to influence the type of major that you're going to take. And that's understandable, because they also want what's best for you and to make sure that you're able to find a job after you graduate from college. But you also have to remember that it's very important for you to think about even day to day. If you met a doctor and the doctor really, really wasn't passionate about caring for people and helping people get better, they will take a very different attitude towards the way they're going to treat you as a patient. Now, a really, really passionate doctor who loves what he does, they're going to always treat you like you're their family because they really care about you. If a doctor goes into being a doctor because of it's prestigious or for the salary, well, he might not care about the people he's treating. And in a profession where it's a matter of life or death, that is very, very critical to find a doctor who really is passionate about what he does and really wants to help his patients get better. So keep that in mind when it comes to you choosing a major and ultimately a profession, because you always want to find the people who's going to be the best at their job and best at their skill and specialty. You don't want the people who was like, well, I wasn't sure why I did this. Well, my parents told me to be an accountant and all I do is, file papers and taxes and that's that. You want the accountant that's going to go above and beyond and helping you save money and save taxes, because it takes a certain type of person who's really passionate to do that kind of job day in, day out. So definitely keep that in mind when you're looking at choosing your own major and ultimately how that will translate into the profession that you're going into after college. So what about timing for selecting a major? Well, lucky for all of you, like I said, with a liberal arts education here in the United States, you really have all of freshman year to explore and learn about yourself, what you're good at, what you're not good at, what types of classes are being offered, what kind of professors are teaching them. So you really have the first year to do that, and then it's only the second year, your sophomore year, that you will have to declare a major. Now, graduate students is a little bit different. Graduate students, by then, when you go to graduate school, you kind of already need to know the direction that you're heading towards. And so, of course, you probably will be in a particular specialty or special course of study. And so, but for undergraduates, the timing is always the second year of college. Okay, and then when it comes to changing your major, I know a lot of people get very nervous because they said, well, gosh, I've taken all of these classes and then I realize come the end of sophomore year, I really don't like this major, and they get very nervous and very stressed out. Since I help a lot of students here in the US, from China especially, I always tell them it's okay. It's okay to change your mind and to change your major. That's the beauty of the American education system, okay, especially at a university level. However, you've got to be very, like I said, you have to plan well, right? Because that means that whatever you decide to change it to, hopefully all the classes that you've taken before will count towards the next major that you decide on. So I'm not sure if many of you are familiar with the credit system, but each class in the US, there is a certain credit, a semester credit that's involved for that class. And usually that one credit counts for 15 to 16 hours of sort of in-class time, okay, sort of contact hour time, which means that you're actually sitting in class, listening to a lecture, talking to other students, hearing the professor teach. So most classes in the US, okay, that's one full class, like for example, math, they'll require 3 credits. Okay, that means that 3 credits will equal to about 45 to 48 hours contact hour time where you have to be in class. You have to take a lecture or you have to be, involved with your student and professors. So if you think about that, most students will have, for a full-time student taking all these classes as an undergrad, you'll probably be needing 12 credits to be a full-time student per semester. That's up to 4 classes, okay? And what that means is that by the time, if you have gone to, let's say, the end of sophomore year, you've declared a major and want to change it, you're looking at a good, I would say, 48 credits that you're going to have to figure out if it's going to be able to transfer over to your new major. And so you really have to look at, for example, if you were taking math and you decided you want to go into economics, there are a lot more requirements that are interrelated. They're connected with each other so that you can use a lot of the credits from your math major and transfer them over to your economics major. But if you're doing, for example, math and maybe something like my history major, that's a lot more challenging to make those credits transfer. But again, a lot of universities have the liberal arts type of core curriculum requirements. And so a lot of times, you believe it or not, some of your math classes could very well go towards your history major, but you might have to take a few more classes or stay in the summertime to make up for the additional required classes for your new art history major. So when you change majors, it's possible, if you do it and plan well, you may be able to do it on time and graduate on time. But if you wait too long, past 60 credits, then it's much harder for you to transfer into a different major. That means you probably have to stay another semester to finish the new major and the new major's requirements. Okay, so I hope that makes sense, because if you go about freshman year properly and explore all the different types of classes, hopefully you'll have a better understanding of what you're good at by sophomore year, and it will be a lot easier to secure the major and not have to change it later on. So that's your goal, definitely, for the undergraduates when they go into college their freshman year. Okay, I wanted to go through some of the common mistakes that a lot of international students have made when they select a major. And I know that, sorry about the slide, because I think during the conversion some of it must have gone off. But again, I kind of touched upon this in previous slides, but I want to emphasize this because I think that most of the students I end up helping who are international students here in the U.S., they struggle with these all the time. And they're very stressed out about it, which means that sometimes, they go very, it affects your health, it affects your mental state, it affects the amount of sleep you get. So I really encourage you guys to think about these things and not try to make the same mistakes. For example, international students, when they select a major, they always follow what everybody else is doing. Yes, I know for sure that there's a huge demand for engineers, and I know for sure that there are certain countries in the world that will always end up coming to the U.S. and taking an engineering major and engineering degree. However, you really have to think about for yourself if this is for you versus everyone else, right? It's very easy to listen to your friends and say, oh yeah, I'm doing engineering, computer science, or oh yeah, my mom and dad want me to because they're supporting me for college. They really encouraged me to do engineering or computer science. But you need to really figure out, do you really like it? Because so many of the students that I have talked to failed. They failed their freshman year because they struggle with those courses. They don't like computer science. They don't like the engineering courses. And what happens is it really translates into their grades, because unlike the domestic students, all of you guys, number one, you need to culturally adjust because the American culture is very different from your own home country's culture. Number two, there's a language difference, which means that if English is not your first language, that's a huge adjustment in terms of the way you communicate, right? And on top of that, if you're learning a major or a subject that you don't like, then it's almost like, you really have a lot to struggle and a lot to manage if you don't end up studying something that you're not interested in. It's already tough to manage the first two, the culture, the language. But to find a topic that you're not passionate about, it makes it even more challenging for you to get through college. And you certainly don't want to fail, because if you fail, your visa status will change and it will impact if you can come back for the second year to continue your studies here. So visa is always a huge thing for students. And yes, if you don't do well grade-wise, it changes your visa status. And if that visa status changes, then the U.S. immigration customs people might not let you come back to continue your studies. So that's why you have to choose your major wisely. Also, picking something you are not good at. The beauty of all of you is that you're students. You're allowed to learn and make mistakes. And yes, making mistakes is definitely a big cultural difference as well between here and your home country. It's okay in the US to make mistakes because we know that in the liberal arts education system, making mistakes is part of the learning process. It's part of figuring out what you're good at and what you're not good at. Whereas a lot of you that come from your home countries where you cannot make a mistake, because making a mistake means you're going to get a lower test score, that sort of mentality behind making mistakes does impact the way you learn. And so that's why when you come to the US, you need to think differently. You have a different mentality. You want to find things that you're good at. And sometimes part of the process is you will end up taking calculus and realizing, I am horrible at calculus. I was good in math because I had to do that for my exams. But really, for me to take another math course, especially if it's calculus or beyond, I'm really, really not as good as everybody else in the class. I'm not as passionate, and it's just getting more boring. Boring. And so that is a good thing, because that means that if you figured out what you're not good at, you're closer to figuring out the things that you are good at. Number 3, picking something you do not like at all. Okay, that is a huge mistake because, in this case, if you never liked math and never want anything to do with math, but you had to take it to pass your exams, you should never consider this as a major, because then you're not going to do well at all. There are going to be students who are more passionate. They're going to be doing math much better than you will ever be able to achieve in math. So you really need to find something that you are passionate about. The one thing that I know employers have said to me is they're willing to offer any smart candidate, doesn't matter if you're an international student, it doesn't matter if you're domestic, an opportunity to be able to work for their company if this person demonstrates that they're really passionate about that job and that company. So here in the US, passion is something that not just employers look for, but all the universities that you apply to, they want to know that you're passionate about their university. They want to know that you're passionate about what you do, because if you are, you're always going to put your best effort forward. And no matter how bad things get, it's your passion that's going to help you overcome all of those bad times. Okay? And so that's why picking something that you do not like is going to make you suffer in the long term. Okay? That's why a lot of people, once you hit a certain age and you have a family, you can't change that career anymore. You cannot change and unlearn some of the things that you did when you were, much younger. So really take this, seriously in terms of picking something that you do like versus picking something that you don't like because you want to get more salary versus it's because you're passionate about this particular major. Okay, and of course, a lot of you do worry about jobs after you graduate because it is very expensive to study in the US, and your parents do want you to be able to do well and get a good job when you're done with college. And that makes sense. However, it's not so much the job that you're going to get after college. It's all the different job experiences, the training, the skill sets that you've acquired throughout college that will ultimately help you get to that dream job. So many international students, when they come to the US, because of your education system and your learning culture, you don't have the opportunity to do things beyond school work, meaning you don't have time to do anything but study, you don't have any time to do anything but homework. And so what happens is you don't have a lot of the skills to help community types of organizations when it comes to volunteering, internships when it comes to summertime to do summer jobs. So your exposure to the actual workforce is very limited because most of you have concentrated a lot of your high school studies or secondary school studies to your tests and your schoolwork and nothing else. But in the United States, a lot of students have the opportunity to do internships. Like when I was younger, I used to work for example, a lot of you know like Zara. This is one of the stores that is all over the world, or H&M. I used to go to these stores and work in the summertime and learn how to sell and learn how to service customers. Even though, I really didn't need the money, but it was just fun to be able to earn some extra money and buy some of the clothes that I liked without having to ask for the money from my parents. But all of these great skills that I learned from a retail position was great because I learned what customers were looking for, how to service them, and most importantly, what it takes to sell something and market a product. And then I kept doing that every summer. I would work for different things. I would go to different cities and do internships. So my work experience, or I guess job experience throughout my college was always something that I kept up. Even when I was studying, I worked at the library so that I'm able to know how to help people and what was important to keep a job like that type of position while I'm also juggling my schoolwork, because that's reality. Even when you get out of college, not only are you going to be working a job, but some of you might have to take care of your family. Some of you might decide to get married early and start a family. So you're always trying to juggle, and it's important for you to then be able to handle your studies and also find opportunities for you to gain the experience. Because a lot of times if you go and apply for jobs like at Google or at Coach, well, if you don't have the experience, they're not going to be able to hire you, right? So gain that job experience first and foremost before you worry about any type of job. And then finally, technical versus practical. Education is kind of divided in these two areas in my mind, because when I talk to a lot of CEOs, I work with a lot of different CEOs because I belong to an organization of CEOs. And a lot of them say to me that, school is great because it teaches you a lot of the technical aspects, especially if you're an engineer, if you're, obviously going to be a doctor in pre-med. But it's really what's missing is the practical side of things. It is sort of the way you communicate to people and way that you're going to treat them and service them. Sometimes it's how you present yourself. It's also your critical thinking. Can you convey an opinion of what something should be, if it's right or wrong? What you feel is to your best knowledge is a recommendation for something. These are all what I call practical skills that you're always going to need after you graduate from school, because these are the requirements for you to be able to be successful in any profession. There's not one CEO that I talked to that did not agree. They all agree that the practical has got to be with the technical. You might be the best engineer, but if you cannot communicate to people, then guess what? And people are not going to know how good you are. There's no way for them to work with you and be able to, utilize the knowledge that you have, and therefore you're going to be very isolated. Good engineers are those that not only know the technical skills, but they also know how to work with a lot of people and be able to communicate technical things to people who are not technical, right? I actually am now in Silicon Valley, and so I deal with a lot of engineers, and sometimes it's very interesting to see how they work because communication is never their strength. It's always they're in their device, if it's a computer or an iPhone, and they're always coding. But you know what? It takes a whole team of people, if you're developing an app, to move that app forward to the marketplace. It takes someone who's good at marketing. It takes someone who's good at sales. It takes someone who's good with money, for finance. It takes all kinds of people to make your app product successful. If it was just your app and your engineering team, then nobody's going to know about this app. They're not going to be able to find it or use it. So again, the marriage of technical and practical skills is so important, and I really encourage you guys to remember that when you're picking a major, because not only it's what you're studying, it's how you're studying and who you're studying with, okay? And so, if you have a major, then what? Like I said, the common mistakes that a lot of my international students who are already here in the US make is the first year they're so overwhelmed by the cultural differences, the language differences, and of course just trying to keep up with class that they forget to volunteer and take internships in the summer, right? They much rather go home, relax because they struggle so much academically, but you really, really, really have to realize that every single experience that you have outside the classroom really helps towards not just getting your major, but applying that major to a job in the future. So always spend your time wisely, plan it out. If there's a moment for you to work on campus, to volunteer for an organization that you like, always do that, because those skill sets are going to help you a lot when you get out of college. Okay, and so I wanted to show you this slide because it's about everyone is special in their own way, which means, again, find your passion. Remember that this is a time for you to really stand out and be different, not follow everybody else, and be good at something. And I mean really good at something that you're passionate about, right? This is your opportunity to know more about you, what you're good at, what you're not good at, and pursue the things that you really are passionate about. Because if you're passionate about something, it shows. It shows in your interview, it shows in the work that you do, the quality of the work that you do. And so passion is very, very important. And of course, there are some things that tests can't measure. So of course, a lot of you come from very test-centric type of cultures, or learning cultures. And what happens is you forget that, at the end of the day, I'm running my company, USA College Connection, and all of the other CEOs that I've deal with on the day-to-day basis, they always say to me, we don't hire people who are good test takers. We hire people who can think critically, can problem solve for us, and can communicate to us what they think. That is the most important thing to a lot of these employers. It's also very important to your professors. And I think for those of you who are applying to college, a lot of universities want to know, are you able to do that? They're going to give you the most amazing opportunities to learn, but can you take advantage of those opportunities once you get to their campus? Because if you don't end up learning how to communicate and you don't end up learning how to think on your own, then it really is challenging for you to move beyond the college campus setting, right? Because at the end, you do want to get a job. And so those are the skill sets that you have to always keep in the back of your mind, no matter what major you decide you're going to do. Okay. And again, when you find the right major, then you're that much closer to accomplishing your American dream, or any dream that you have, right? So really take the time to pick your major, find what you're passionate about, find out who you are. That's the best part about college and coming into an American university. So that's pretty much the end of my presentation. I wanted to give everybody some time to ask some questions. You can reach me at my email address, because if we run out of time for questions, please feel free to email me at irene@askucc.com. I'm also on WeChat for those of you in Asia. And then you can also find my website, USA College Connection, or askucc.com. Askucc.com is in Chinese, actually, and there are some pages that are in English that will give tips on how to write essays and resumes. So please visit those websites when you get a chance. So if anybody has questions, there's an area for you to type in. Please send them our way, as I'm happy to address anything that wasn't clear to you in my presentation, or if there's certain concerns that you're worried about after you get to the US. These are all, no question is a bad question. So please, please, please do ask questions. And let me go to the last slide while we give you guys the opportunity to do that. So while you guys are thinking about different questions, I do have an H-1B Academy, which is really just about how do you guys, after you get to the U.S. and you have certain majors, what will it take for you to get internships? And ultimately, a lot of students want to stay in the U.S. for 3 more years, right, after they get their college degree, because they want to gain that work experience here in the U.S. market. And so I've established this job impact, or what I call H-1B Academy, just for international students, because I want you guys to understand from the employer side as well as the legal process of getting a sponsorship, so that you're better able to prepare yourself, especially when it comes to selecting a major and, of course, taking courses on campus that are going to help you when it comes to getting that internship and ultimately the sponsorship to stay in the U.S. much longer. So this is a program that I feel I've been working with a lot of students at Berkeley and Stanford universities, where they feel it's very helpful for them because it gives them that perspective that they don't have as a college student, to know what the employers are thinking about. And so we do have an information session. It's free online. It's on Monday, February 24th. You can go in to my askucc.com. There is an H-1B Academy page, and go in and register for this free online webinar. So hopefully this will give you additional information that will help you when it comes to picking the right majors or even the right school, because you definitely want to make sure that the school that you're going to is the right school for the major that you're interested in, right? It has to be something that they're good at as a university, because if they're not, then you probably want to consider another institution. But this is, all about helping you guys make that connection between what you study in the U.S. and what you end up doing after you graduate in the workplace. So I highly recommend this to all of you, and I believe that if there aren't any questions, then we're going to end the session. But I do want to thank all of you guys for your time, for listening to me. I hope I spoke slowly enough so that it was clear for you to understand. But I'm sure that you're able to also see this on demand through College Week Live in the future. And again, if you have questions, please email me at irene@askucc.com. And I'm happy to answer your questions, because I know this is a lot of information in a short amount of time. Okay, thank you again. It was nice meeting everybody. And for those of you who are overseas, I think it's a good night for you because of the time difference. And hope to see you guys soon at one of our H-1B Academy info sessions. Bye.